We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Beis and Beis Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 62b. On the previous summon, Rav Huna had said that let's say a person has children and then those children die, so he still has fulfilled the mitzvah of Pru Ravu. And so the Gemara now asks that the Braisa says Bnei Bonim Harein Kebonim, that grandchildren are the equivalent of children. And Rashi over here explains Bnei Bonim Harein Kebonim Kasal Kadaytach. Right now we think it means as follows: Shemeis Hazochro Hanekeva. Let's say the person's male or female child died. V'hayulo ben sheyitztarif machos aviv. So if that child that died had a son, that son can also count together with the sister of his father, and that will count as though the grandfather had a son and daughter, or with the brothers of his mother. The point is that the grandfather will no longer be chayiv in period of ribya, because again, the child that died had a child, so therefore through the grandchildren he fulfills Pru Ravu. That's what the Braisa is saying according to our now. Now, the understanding is that the only reason he fulfills Pru Ravu is because the child who died had a son. But if not, Lokayim, then he has not fulfilled it. The Shev is Ba'inon, because you need to have that the world is settled. This would therefore be difficult to Rav Huna, because Rav Huna said it doesn't matter whether they're grandchildren or not. Once you have the children, you have fulfilled the mitzvah. It doesn't matter if those children die, and they don't require that they have the children of their own. And so the Gemara answers, no, Kitanya ahi lahashlam. That Braisa, when it says grandchildren are like children, has nothing to do with what you think it's talking about. It's talking about completing the number, the requisite number of children. As Rashi over here says, Kitanya ahi lahashlam kagon shahayolo lezakin ela ben echad. For example, let's say the elder, the grandfather, only had one son. V'nasa haben isha v'holid bas. Now that son marries a woman, has a daughter. So pater hazakin, now the elder is pater. It's considered like he has a son and a daughter because his son had a daughter. Shari hishlam zes chovaso, because his son completed his chiyuv. But let's say originally he had a male and a female child. Even if those children died without any children, he still would fulfill Pru Ravu, and therefore it is no kasha against Rav Huna at all. And the Gemara continues, Mesechet, we have another question from a Braisa against Rav Huna. Bnei bonim hareim kebonim, it says grandchildren are like children. Meis echad mehem oshenim tzatzaris, if one of the children dies or one of the children cannot have children, lokayim period v'ribya, then he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of Pru Ravu. To Yufta, the Rav Huna to Yufta, that is indeed a refutation of Rav Huna, because it says explicitly in this Braisa that if the person has children and those children die, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of Pru Ravu. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, B'nei bonim hareim kebonim. Again, we said that grandchildren have a status like children. So Savar Abaye lememer. So Abaye thought to say, bro libro, let's say his son has a son. Ubrata lebrater, let's say his daughter has a daughter. V'kol shekein bro lebrata, and certainly let's say his daughter has a son. Those are all going to count. We'll say the rule of grandchildren are like children. But the question is as follows: Avol brata livro lo. But Abaye thought to say, if a person's son has a daughter, that means a daughter to his son. If a person's son has a daughter, that would not count, because in terms of inheritance and other issues, the daughter doesn't really take over for the son. So therefore, let's say a person has a son, and that son has a daughter. Let's say again that son is going to die, so that daughter will not count as a replacement, so to speak, of the son. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rava, so Rava said back to Abai, it's not true. L'sheves yitzara boy, all you need is that the world was created to be settled. V'ha'ika, and the world is being settled. It doesn't make a difference. Let's say the person's son had a daughter, that's still going to count. And the Gemara continues, Dekuli alma mios trei mechadlo. Now it seems like everybody agrees, whether Abai and Rava, that if one child has two children, meaning you have two grandchildren from one child, that is not going to count. Rashi over here says, trei mechad, v'asheni meis below bonim. So you have a situation, again, where the second child died without children. So the first child had two grandchildren, and the second child died without children. So lokayim azakin period v'ribya. Apparently that would not count in terms of fulfilling Pru Ravu. If the grandfather only had one child that survived, the fact that that child has two kids, that's not going to help. But the Gemara says, Velo, is that really not going to help? But the Rabbanan said to Rav Sheshes, Nesiv itasafa olid b'ni, marry a woman and you should have sons, because all he had was daughters. V'yomer luhu, and so then he said back to them, B'nei barati b'nei nenu, he says, aren't the sons of my daughter, don't they count as my sons? In other words, he seemed to be arguing that even though he only had daughters, but this should count, the grandchildren should count to fulfill his mitzvah of Pru Ravu. And so the Gemara says, no, that's not a proof. Hasam over there, dechuye kamadchilu. He was just pushing them off. Really, he didn't want to get remarried for other reasons. The real reason Rav Sheshes didn't want to marry another woman was because he could not father children any longer due to the lengthy shiurim of Rav Huna. Rashi over here says, Rav Huna would have long drushes. Everyone would need to go to the bathroom, but they would hold themselves back, and then they became that they weren't able to have children. That's a brisa in Bechoros, and so therefore Rav Sheshes was just pushing them off by saying, oh, my daughters have had sons, and therefore that should count. But the real reason Rav Sheshes didn't want to marry again was because Rav Sheshes knew that he could not father children any longer. And we will just point out over here that the question of the Gemara, when they say trei mechad, what the Gemara is saying is, are you allowed to have, let's say, just one child, and through that one child fulfill the mitzvah of Pru Revu based on that child's grandchildren? And so the Gemara was suggesting from Rav Sheshes seemed to be saying, yes, you're allowed to do exactly that. Even though Rav Sheshes never had a son, he only had daughters, so he on his own had never fulfilled the mitzvah of Pru Revu. He was trying to fulfill the mitzvah of Pru Revu through the grandchildren. In other words, the discussion before was, let's say a person has a son and a daughter, and then the son and the daughter, they die, but they leave grandchildren. So that's an issue of replacing the son and the daughter that he had. That's what we were talking about before. The question, though, here is, can a person fulfill Pru Revu through the grandchildren if the person did not have two children of his own? And that's what the Gemara was trying to prove from Rav Sheshes, that you indeed could fulfill it. That's what Rav Sheshes was trying to say. But again, the Gemara says Rav Sheshes was just being docha, and really it's not true. Trei mechad would not work. If a person only has one child, for example, they will not be able to fulfill Pru Revu based on the grandchildren that child has. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rabba le Rava bar Mori. Rabba said to Rava bar Mori, Menoha milsa do Amar Rabbanan b'nei bonim harein kebanim. Where do we learn this idea that the Rabbanan say that grandchildren are considered like the children, like a person's own children? The Gemara says, if you're going to say it's from the following pasuk, this is what Lavan says to Yaakov, Habonos benosai v'habonim bonai. He says, your daughters are like my daughters, your sons are like my sons. So he's saying, my grandchildren are like my children. Elameata, but according to that, v'hatson soni, he says, your sheep are like my sheep. Is he saying he really owns the sheep? Of course not. Hachanami, you're going to say that over there also. Ela dekanis minai, all Lavan means is that you've got them, you've acquired them from me. Hachanami dekanis minai, so too, that's all it means. It means the children, they came through me, because again, Lavan was telling Yaakov, you married my daughters. And so the Gemara says that's not a proof. Elamehacha, rather the proof is from over here, from the following pasuk, V'achar bo Chetzron al bas Machir avigilad, it says Chetzron came to the daughter of Machir, v'atelad lo es Seguv, and she gave birth to Seguv. Uchsiv, and the pasuk says, Minei Machir yardu mechokim, it says from Machir came these governors. Uchsiv Yehuda mechokike, and the pasuk also says Yehuda, the governors. But the point is, it's saying even though it was his grandchildren, even though it's Chetzron who had relations with the daughter of Machir, but they're considered Machir's children, and so therefore you see that grandchildren are like children. And the Gemara continues, Masnis, in our Mishnah. Now our Mishnah indicates, the Katani, Rashi says, the Katani elim kain, hoim yesh lo yevatel. Sounds like from our Mishnah, once a person has fulfilled Pru Revu, he no longer has to fulfill the mitzvah. He's already done it. He doesn't need to have more children. The lo Rabbi Yoshua. The Gemara is going to say that doesn't seem to follow Rabbi Yoshua's opinion. Rabbi Yoshua says even when a person has fulfilled the basic mitzvah Pru Revu, he should still continue to have children. Masnis and the lav Rabbi Yoshua. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yoshua. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yoshua says, let's say a person marries when he's young, he should marry another woman when he gets older. If he has children when he's younger, he should also have children when he gets older. Like the pasuk says, in the morning you should plant your seeds, but you shouldn't let up. In the evening you should continue even when you're older. You don't know which one's going to be kosher. Is it going to be this one or that one? Therefore, you should continue to have children. Or if both of them, they're both going to be good. Therefore, again, a person should continue to have children. That's why we're saying the Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Kiva says, he interprets the pasuk slightly differently. Lamad Torah bi'alduso. What the pasuk means is if a person learned Torah when he was younger, Yom Torah biziknuso, he should also learn Torah when he gets older. Hayolo talmidim bi'alduso. If he had students when he was younger, Yolo talmidim biziknuso, he should have students when he gets older also. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, Baboker zera zarecha v'gomer, same basic idea. Pasuk says you should plant the seeds in the morning, but don't let up in the evening. And the Gemara continues, Amru, they said, Shnei Masar Elef Zugim Talmidim Hayulo Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students, Migvas ad Antifras, from Gvas until Antifras, V'kulan Mesu V'perek Echad. They all died at the same time, Ibnei Shelo Nohagu Kavod Zelazeh, because they didn't treat each other with proper respect, with proper kavod. V'haya ha'olam shamim ad shabar Rabbi Akiva etzar Rabboseinu shebedorim. And the world was desolate until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south, V'shana lehem, and then he taught them, and they were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. Those were the 5 students. V'heim heim hamidu Torah, and they are the ones that reestablished the Torah. Osa Shah at that time. And the Gemara continues, Tana was taught, Kula Meisumi Pesach V'Aratzeres. So all of these students of Rabbi Akiva that died, they died from the time period of Pesach until Shavuos. Amar Rav Chama bar Abba says, V'Tema Rabbi Chia bar Avin, and some people say it's Rabbi Chia bar Avin, says, Kula Meisu Misa Ra. They all died a bad death. Maihi, what is that bad death? Amar Rav Nachman said, Asachra. They died from the disease known as Asachra. And this disease, Askara, is generally known as diphtheria, which is a disease that's an infection in the throat. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Masna says, Halacha Rabbi Yoshua. The halacha is like Rabbi Yoshua, meaning a person should continue to have children even after he's fulfilled the basic requirement of Pru Revu. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Tanchum, Amar Rabbi Chaniloi. Rabbi Tanchum says in the name of Rabbi Chaniloi, Kol Adam Shein Lo Ish, any person who doesn't have a wife, Shari below Simcha, below Bracha, below Tova. He's without Simcha, he's without Bracha, he's without Tova. Where do we see this? Below Simcha we see that there's no Simcha. It says you're going to be happy, you and your household. So the Simcha comes together with the Isha. Below Bracha, without a Bracha, how do we see that? Because the Pasuk says, L'haniach Bracha el Beisecha, again, talks about Beisecha, your household, and it talks about Bracha. And below Tova, the person who is without Tova, without good, T'chsiv, as the Pasuk says, Lo Tov, Hayos Ha'adam Levado, it isn't good for a person to be alone. And the Gemara continues, B'ma'arova Amri, in the West, they say, below Torah, below Chom, a person without a wife, it's like he has no Torah, and he has no wall, meaning no wall of protection. Below Torah, T'chsiv, where do we see there's no Torah? Because the Pasuk says, Ho'imen ein ezrasi bi v'sushia nidcha mimeni, talking about the fact that the wisdom was taken from me. That's a Pasuk in Eov. That's the idea of no lack of wisdom or lack of Torah. And below Choma, where do we see that there's no wall, meaning there's no protection? T'chsiv, like the Pasuk says, Nekeva to sovev gever. It says that the female surrounds, meaning to say protects the male. And the Gemara continues, Rava bar Ula Amar Rava bar Ula says, below Shalom, a person without an Isha is below Shalom, is without peace. T'chsiv, like the Pasuk says, V'yadata ki Shalom alecha, ufakarta navcha v'lo secheta, talking about the fact that Ahalecha, your tent, is in Shalom, is in peace. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Kol hayodea bi'ishto shehi yiras shamayim. Anybody who knows about his wife, that she fears heaven, ve'eno pokta, and he doesn't visit her, meaning to say he doesn't have relations with her, nikra chote, such a person is called a sinner, shenamar, like the Pasuk says, v'yodata ki shalom alecha v'gomer, quoting the same Pasuk as above, and again that Pasuk talked about ufakarita, that's the idea of eno pokta. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Chayev adam lifkod es ishto, a person needs to visit his wife, b'shah shu yotzi laderech, at the time that he's going to go out on the road for his travels. At that time, before he departs, he should have relations with his wife, shenamar, like the Pasuk says, again the same Pasuk as before, v'yadata ki shalom alecha v'gomer. And the Gemara says, Hame hacha nafka, but 1 second, is this idea really learned from here, from this Pasuk? Mehasam nafka, it's learned from there, it's learned from the following Pasuk. It says, V'ali sheich teshuk asech, it says in the Pasuk, that to your husband your desire will be, that was told to Chava, Milamed, that comes to teach us, Sha'isha mishtokekes al bala, b'shah shu yotze laderech, that a woman desires her husband at the time that he's leaving for travels, that he's leaving for the road. And so the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef says, Lo nitzruchel asamach levesta. No, this pasuk is needed. Let's say it's a situation where she's near her set time, meaning her time for her period. Normally at that point in time, a person is not supposed to have relations with his wife, and so that's why the pasuk is going out of its way and teaching that if the husband is leaving for a trip going on the road, then even samach levesta, he should be with his wife. And Rashi over here explains, Lo nitzruchel asamach levesta, the pasuk is needed, let's say it's near her appointed time. Afagav da'amar abanan chayev adam even though really the sages said that a person should separate from his wife during the time of this ona, and nevertheless, when he's going out on travels, so then he should be with her. And the Gemara continues, V'kama, now how much is considered the amount of time that's samuch, that's near the vest? Amar Rava says, Ona, it refers to one time period. Rashi over here says, Ona imregila liros b'yom, means to say, if she normally sees during the daytime, so asura kol hayom, so then she's forbidden to her husband in a normal situation that entire day. V'imregila liros b'layla, if she normally sees at night, so asura kol halayla, she's going to be usur the entire night. And the Gemara continues, V'hani mili l'davar harashus. Now that's all true when it's something that's a voluntary situation. Avol l'dvar mitzvah mitridi, but when it comes to a dvar mitzvah, so then already the person should be tarid. Rashi over here explains, V'hani mili d'chayev l'pogda ki oza l'dvar harashus. If he's going on a trip, if he's going on travel that's voluntary, so then he's obligated to be with her. Avol l'dvar mitzvah, but let's say he's setting out on a trip that is a mitzvah, so then there actually is no obligation. Mishum de tarid b'mitzvah, because the person has the burden of the mitzvah upon him. Inami, or mitrid betashmish v'yavatal mitzvah, or he might get, mitrid might refer to the fact that he'll get busy with the act of relations, and then he's going to end up, he's not going to do the mitzvah, so that's why this only applies l'dvar harashus. There's no chiyav l'pokta if it's a dvar mitzvah because of the issue of tarud. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ha'oev esishto kegufo, if somebody loves his wife like himself, V'hamechabda yoser migufo, and he honors her more than he honors himself, V'hamadrich bonov uvenosa b'derech yishar, and he guides his sons and his daughters on the straight path, V'hamasiyan samach lepirkon, and he marries them off near the time of their maturity. All of Akasav Omer, about such a person, the Pasuk says, V'yadata ki shalom alecha, you should know there will be peace in your tents. And the Gemara continues, Ha'oev es shechenav, somebody who loves his neighbors, V'hamekarev es krovav, and somebody who brings close those who are close to him, V'hanose es bas achoso, somebody who marries the daughter of his sister. And we'll take a look at Rashi, Yoser migufo, he should honor her more than himself, Does ilusa de itasa kashmi de gavra, because by a woman, when a woman is shamed, so it hurts more than when by a man, and therefore he should honor her more than himself. V'hanose bas achoso, and a person who marries the daughter of his sister, why is that a good thing? Gigui adam rabin al achoso yoser menach. The idea over here is that a person is more fond of his sister than his brothers. So if he ends up marrying the daughter of his sister, he'll actually love his wife more, and therefore that is considered a good thing. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Gimel Amud Aleph.